Let's get one thing straight. I don't think they've ever come out with a bad knife model. The Neutron, the Atom, the Shadow, all certified bangers, all from a company whose name is synonymous with the words sold out. But recently they have discontinued the Shadow, leaving many people wondering what's next. Today, we've got the latest and greatest, newest model from Three Rivers Manufacturing, and we're going to check it out. Let's go ahead and talk about the Bulldog.
This is Sparta!
Hey, how's it going, everybody? If you're new here, welcome in. And if you've been here before, you know what to do. Smash the like button on the way in. I'm Rollshambo, the connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny. And if you are familiar with that logo, you already know this is the brand new model from Three Rivers, the Bulldog. This is the knife that is replacing the TRM Shadow. Since they recently retired that knife model, they had to come out with something else that used this riverlock, and they replaced it with the Bulldog. Thank you to TRM for sending this my way. I reached out to them when I found out that they were releasing a new model with the riverlock. I said, hey guys, I absolutely have to check this out. I'd love to be one of the first channels to check out your new knife model, and they sent it my way. So again, huge shout out to them for being willing to give me the opportunity to talk about this knife, because if you didn't know, anytime they have a new model release, they sell out so quickly, very, very quickly. But I'm going to tell you guys right now, people have this idea in their head that they'll never be able to get this because all of their releases sell out immediately. They do frequent releases, more frequently than many other American knife companies. So if you want to get in on one of their new knife releases, follow them on Instagram. They give plenty of heads up there, and it's not too difficult to get your hands on one of these if you're following them in the right spots. So in case you weren't in the know about the new Bulldog, here's what happened. TRM announced a few months ago that they were going to be retiring the Shadow, which used their Axis style lock, the river lock, and this is the knife that replaced it. Now, this is a departure from a couple different design language aspects, and I'm really excited to talk about it. First of all, this is the thickest blade stock that they've ever made. In fact, I want to say that this is the thickest knife that they've ever made, especially if you compare it to something else like the TRM Neutron. Also, this features a half-length back spacer. They call it a back strap, but it's basically a jimped G10 back spacer that runs half the length of the handle scales and is going to do a really good job of protecting the edge of that blade against any crap that's in your pockets. It also helps out with ergonomics because you won't find the meat of your palm falling between those handle scales, which I think is great. But let's say that you do get in on one of the drops. What are you looking at? What's it going to cost your pocket? These went for $225, and for your hard-earned dollars, you get a stone-washed, tumbled finish Magna Cut blade that's just over 3 inches long. Overall, it's got a length of 7 inches, and it's going to be coming in at 3.5 ounces. So it's a relatively lightweight carry, and it also has this really nicely done titanium deep carry pocket clip with these flush screws. The liners on the inside that are housing the riverlock are steel, and they are inset into the handle scales. For the ergos, they're fantastic, and it kind of reminds me of the ergos that we get on something like a Spyderco Para 3. While this is a 7-inch knife, and that is not necessarily what many would consider to be a full-size knife, it takes full advantage of the natural lines of the handle scales to allow you to get a full grip on it regardless. I've got medium to large size man hands, and I have absolutely no issue getting a more than adequate grip on this knife. It does not have any jimping on the spine of this blade, which honestly I wish that there was, but ultimately it's not a big deal because we get plenty of grip and plenty of texturing on these G10 handle scales. The body screws on here are in fact T6, but I don't know if it matters because if you look in the box, there's a piece of paper just like there was on the TRM Shadow that says, please don't take me apart. So I'm not sure if this is similar to the Shadow in the construction. I don't necessarily think that it is because the Shadow had kind of a clamshell design, whereas this is definitely 3 distinct pieces between the handle scales and of course that back spacer. But I need to reach out to them and find out because I think that this could be a great candidate for making particular scales for, kind of like we have on the TRM Neutron. I would love to see some titanium lizard skin contoured handle scales for the Bulldog. I think that that would be absolutely fantastic. Now, an improvement from the Shadow is going to be on the deployment. I have absolutely no issue doing a reverse flick on the Bulldog. On the Shadow, it wasn't something that I could do reliably with those thumb studs. It just didn't have the right angle, or maybe it didn't have the right torque, or maybe it had something to do with the lock itself. The lock on this one feels quite a bit stiffer, in fact. I'm not sure if they're using thicker gauged Omega springs or not, but it's very, very reactive. On the retraction and deployment, it's very easy. If you want to do a slow roll, that's absolutely no issue either. And the action feels nice and smooth. One of the things about Axis style locks is that they can tend to feel gritty, especially when you're doing kind of a slow close. On this one, it feels smooth all the way throughout. We also don't have a ton of billboarding on this knife. On one side, we have the engraved Three Rivers logo, and on the other, it just says TRM USA Magna Cut. Now on the Magna Cut on here, I'm not necessarily sure what the Rockwell hardness is. I did reach out to them a while ago, and they said that it kind of depends on who they're using for their heat treats, because they don't do their heat treats in-house. They typically send out for that work to be done. But I have went ahead and put this through its cutting paces, because I already know that some of you might be concerned with the thicker blade stock. How well does it cut? And check it out, guys. The cutting actually works really, really well. And we're going to start off with cutting some paper to test the edge geometry and the factory sliciness. that's really slicey, guys. Really very slicey. Now, lots of knives can cut paper. It's not a matter of whether if it can, but rather how well it can. And that actually performs very, very nicely. But what about something thicker, like maybe some cardboard? Cardboard cutting is a very common use case scenario for me with my knives. It's actually one of the things that I cut the most frequently. And let's go ahead and check that out. Yeah, that is great. That is fantastic, guys. You can shave the cardboard into tiny pieces with this knife, absolutely no problem. And then lastly, we've got some paracord here. Rope cutting is another common use case scenario for a lot of people. No issues on a single strand. What about on a double strand? Nope. What about on a quadruple strand? Let's see if I can get this over there safely. Yeah, it keeps cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting, and it does a really good job. I mean, for crying out loud, this thing will go through cardboard for forever. Absolutely no issues here. Despite the thicker blade stock, this one is going to be plenty slicey. Regardless of what you're using this to cut, it's going to do a pretty dang good job, and I think that the thicker blade stock is going to give people a lot more faith when it comes to doing those heavier cutting tasks. I'm really excited to see where things go with the TRM Bulldog. I think that this is a model that's going to be here to stay for quite a long time, and I think that they've done a pretty good job, especially on this first release. But now I'm curious to find out what your thoughts are. Are you going to try to get in on one of these Bulldog releases, or is it going to be a pass for you? By the way, if you watched this far and you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing. And if you want to watch more awesome knife and EDC content, go ahead and click on one of the videos that pops up next.